So that definitely I'm still sticking to my person very from that. Like the guy who's asking, is like right now asking why I can do it with that joint that same would be definitely that player himself would be definitely would be like the culprit behind that elimination of that elimination of that exactly the player is definitely not the frame and I'm still taking my book frame that like since that like elimination of like that new player happened exactly along the path that like Swan and in like that time while Swan and Kidwa was like taking the path to like the trade shop to like exchange their cards for money cards like maybe like the reason for like so like the middle Syrian that like definitely like that guy who's like nothing going to do to like join his team would definitely be the culprit that he would be totally so would be totally absolutely lying about like it being like the work of like player hunter. It's definitely like a very unfortunate. So he might have like that player might have done it maybe to like steal away like the money chart belongs to like that movie player because like since like wanting to do was on their way to like the place of like I'm getting that movie player might have already gotten a few cards and might have exchanged those two cards for like money cards and he might have been on his like way back from the trade shop like connected so clouds and might have happened and he might have wanted to make them definitely my person very embarrassing and definitely might have very impression for like what might have happened with like the different like one of like the team and also that was guy who's like right now asking like short and they want to like join his team like in this group like there will be one person that will be having this like unique kind of spell which will be having like the power to like that basically if that spell is like placed on to like the target then other the confidence will be like there will be a time up to that spell. So like that spell is placed into like the target like and will be like once like the time up is like completed like at that point like the target will be exploring as well as like simultaneously like the target that bind and all of this like either the target bind or like all the target card if you let's straight away would be like going to like the person who might have placed that felt onto like the target. It's definitely much better. So that definitely even though that the girl in at the very beginning we had this even from the introduction for like the career writing game had told that revealed that gone out that basically while a player gets eliminated just like bind up as well as the thing as well as in terms of start get eliminated as well. Like I'm suffering that yet like I'm saying there will be all these loopholes within like loopholes strategies within like the rewriting game where like some different this self might actually exist where like with this timer like through such a strategy like another player will be able to like steal away the task of like the target you know like to spend in the place. Might have been what might have happened with definitely remember the rainbow. So like what might have happened would be that the villain strategy of that guy who's like right now in Fortnite like joined his team might have been that he might have basically uh then like, he might have been the least one among like the with like the moment born and killed and like you know you had entered into like the video and like get them feeling that strong feeling of like being what to specific side like and there might have been among like those who had like uh, were watching from that perspective and observing like many of the like I'm looking there might have been players who might have done that consciously to like hoping that might do like when you will have towards like the option where they would be like the overconfident points among like when you would have towards like the direction that they would be like doing that from the business doing what and I'm looking like those would be like players who have like a bit of experience within like the real game who use the consciously doing that like consciously especially target like those new players who would be like would be more confident and approaching them in that direction so that like they might need to take advantage of like the positive like through the more confident like of those players like making a mistake to probably feel away that might be completed that position and that there might have been that players that might have also like might have observed that genuinely players who might have been genuinely weak and basically hence like their observation being easily able to be sensible for like the newbie player might have been what might have actually happened. Certainly might be the happenings behind like those that navy players feeling and but like when they was from like those specific two areas, especially in Amsterdam. So that's certainly was very interesting for like the guy, the navy player story. this now got eliminated would be like among like the great number of like maybe players around like Ross and Kilo has entered into the GreedIsle game right now. Like he might have been like the weakest among them, which definitely makes the real person. So like I'm also predicting that this like player who's like right now has been gone and Kilo select joined this point might be among like the weak players in like when compared to like the entire effect the great number of players using like the GreedIsle game that guy and just like it would be among like the weakest players in the cleaner is the reimbursement. So like the reimbursement but like the three might be just like only just like jive and just like root like only options to be able to that bring down and eliminate that Dawn and to as well as steal their binders. You know the reimbursement well like the newbie player who just now got eliminated like on tremendous reimbursement might see like the just among like that kind of set of like a newbie players that entered into like the real game still to be a whole lot stronger than this that guy and with that team of that group of that uh, group team that we were in the so that we in order for him to like totally eliminate as well as like steal away that newbie player that money curve like like the team like he might have had like and his like group might have had like no other option but only to like rely on the alone the name of the region. Whereas like the strong players on the friends would be like the strong extreme players like the actual player on the would be like that would be he was totally unafraid that he'll be approaching and taking on fights without that any fear of the and basically putting like the player hunter these extreme players won't be at all even bothering would be players that wouldn't even bother to like even show up anywhere near to like the entrance area or to let's say clear a name where like gone and to had just not shown up and entered into the grade and game even to like the cities near that area that can be find like the actual extreme players might not even bother to even show up because like I'm the like their goals will be far higher because like because definitely like the extreme players like the players under 20 players who will be having like the only intent to like to complete like to not leave without like completing the career and game to never regardless of how many items they will be getting that to not exit from the career and game without completing that particular game without getting the entirety of like the items within that particular game. So that would be their mindset. So like how different such individuals like player hunters like I think will be on like the would have progressed so far ahead into that particular game that like, they will be far ahead into deep into that particular game will be that's the location where like the actual player hunters even be protecting in the minimum difference and they would only be hunting players who would be like just a bit further from where they would be who are just a bit like weaker than the would be like the only ones like the player under which wouldn't do targeting for like the intent of that player I think for that like they could get like the rare those rare items with like three with like limits that might be lower than 10 is the limit of the and also the limit information for like in like the designated pocket time the designated cards like a button starting from like 0 to like 99 and delivering it will be like the cards from 80 and above that the current would be that the card that will be having that really low limit in like the number of cards availability especially mandatory effort. So that I'm going to be in like such a descending order where like in like the designated focus in like the designated cards like from like the designated cards with like the number 0 should be having that the greatest card limit is definitely number can you be that much more easier to find as well. That's definitely my secondary temperature. So definitely, and like those limits will be like slowly and gradually decreasing. The more like the number of hectares in exactly being reduced from 0 to like 20 to like 50 and that way. And like the number of the increasing like the limit as well gradually in like a gradual descending order would be decreasing. Might be the case with the lunar strength. Also on certain things so the initial start in like the initial start like the cards of like number from 0 to that 20 would be all present in that the initial areas of that the career identity and not in the deeper areas of like the career identity of the human orientation. So that definitely simple that this guy who has right now asked you on Silva is the one to speak is right now like the present in like the beginning areas of like the career identity that intent might be to that through to maybe steal like money cards and that way actually like play the game in such a way to like to to at least be able to like steal at least 20 uh, at least 20 of like the designated cards or like at least that or like a bunch of that ability to like free pocket free cards and basically to as soon as possible at that point and to like somehow make it to like that checkpoint area. So, like my thing to remember since that basically like the right thing that right now as you want to do actually like don't just that create like I mean it would be and to like record this so extremely that like they will be probably only planning on like basically stealing uh, only from like they would only absolutely certain that they would only think that they will so be that they will only be able to like steal from like the newbies in like the opposing situation. So like they would only and in terms of the consumer consideration that we can like the designated that like there will be a set point for like maybe like 50 or like 49 of like the initial designated start might have to be collected in order for like the player to reach that checkpoint scenario where like the player will be able to that finally leave the video directly. So that really matters the range. Like also very also that like things like the guy who's like working so like that he has like frequently simply has recently revealed that they that he has to like re-enter back into like the career identity within 10 days or like 3 days in the like data failure that showing that as well would be like the situation that even if like a player for like my position impressions that like even if a player uh, even if a player collect like the initial fortnight of like the designated cards like and reach like the checkpoint scenario and since according to the television that will be starting to doing at that point that the player will be like the career identity would still even at that point like the player would still have like the limitation where like he would have that player would still have to like continue playing that the game within exactly in 10 days and unlucky enough that like the data getting wiped out and is that way that even though he'll be able, that player might be able to like return back into like the real world like he was the next time after like the 10 day limit is like across like then that's the next time that player plays like his real life game his like checkpoint advantage is totally lost and he might have still like only start over from like the very beginning of like the real life game might be that like the limitations that might be for them within that particular line game, even for player plays of that checkpoint of that particular line game. So definitely my working very impressive. So that so according to my book, very impressive. This guy is like right now asking that go and to want to like join this team. I'm looking for like this only intent would do that. We would get that only that and that the great island game might have been far too extremely overwhelming for him. Especially my perspective, when he had in his mental, especially in the mission, like even to like the percentage would be still feeling like extremely overwhelming for him. So that guy would be having absolutely no plans at all in that completing the great island game. So that is only intent would be to that somehow struggle to way in the that tripping all the newbies were working to that they somehow struggle in going to that slowly encouraging to like to finding exactly the right people like to be that big process like you know, and basically for him to let's see a kind of not only like the resilient cards but like a bunch of free cards as well. Even though it will be like the initial setup like the free but still his plan definitely will be to like increase like the size and number of like put like through and that's it create like a huge group so that like them collectively and numbers for like him definitely would be the leader of that group and this thing then would be to like what he might have thought through like the group members would be that like they would be slowly but surely would be increase and expand their group and would be able to like complete the entirety of like the career identity that way. But then naturally he might be also tricking his own group members as well. Because like he would have totally be like extremely afraid of that and might have gotten so to know well by that extreme intensity and that difficulty of the career and the use of the career identity that like the only thing in his mind would be to like to somehow make it to collecting being able to like get at least like 49 being able to get that 49 designated cards and since according to the convention at that point, walk into that completely the superior dining game permanently and they really walk into like save himself from that superior dining game, especially in that would be the flat plan that you know so that the during that maybe definitely he will be also that he might be also planning on eventually that setting his like team members as well. Like some sort of like an excuse for like having like team members hand over like the card to him so that like he was only planning on that way that way that coupled with that the efforts that significant of that efforts that usually are putting that all of them together to like eventually collectively get the total number of cards to like the 49 number of cards were like himself to like selfishly by tricking and cheating. Even his like team members like forced him to like selfishly escape from like the career and again and return back to like the real world. You see that with like the big goal is the playing of the race. Whereas like the extreme players like the player hunters would be like players who would have fixed in their mind to like be complete that career and game and get not only all the legendary cards but also um, all the but also all the free cards as well. Would be the only such players who would be actually present within like the deeper areas of like the career and game who would have gone through an extreme skill within like the island team. Then alone might be like the only player under who will be only planning on returning from the Secret Island game after like completing the 10 days of the Secret Island game. This is definitely my secondary understanding. Like all the remaining players will be like non-player under. It's definitely my prediction. Like all the remaining players will be like the from all that remaining players that come to the ring, there will be like the section of players who would be like who would have regretted entering into the Secret Island game and might have been or well by like thinking to be on the Secret Island game and might be like ready trying to like get the cards filled and trying to like collect 49 cards and that will reach like the checkpoint and quickly leave from like the Great Island game before someone eliminates them. Like this would be like a great number of like those remaining players and like the other thing of like remaining players in that section of players usually players who would be like only planning on that some of them who might have already reached like the checkpoint, and some other players who would be like already planning on not only just making it to like the checkpoint, but like after like who would be only absolutely confident that they would be able to like make it to like the checkpoint. Yet like they would do that also strongly feeling that they still would be that they still that friends to that complete like real island game. So that their intent would be to like even after reaching that checkpoint for them to like only leave the real island game up, ensuring that they have gotten all the assistant valuable items that they need from within the Jira again. Suddenly mentioning it for like when to collect all of that and only to let you from the Jira again at that point. And hello, the remaining section of the player within the Jira again. Definitely my boss again. So definitely good like shall shortly also like definitely planning on entering and basically seeing within that definitely entering within like the Great Island game. So like Shannon, I think like planning on entering not only is entering to the Great Island game himself, especially with like also Faith and things I think like have also like entered into the Great Island game with like Shal right now. We are having like basically trying to like get Super Bowl, I think, like, and they really got of their things that also play like the video that again, they also due to like the kind of expansion with like them like having like obsession with like I think more just like rare and valuable items. So like definitely within like the video that again, like there will be such great number of rare and valuable items, which would be like things like it has already been revealed that they think non-father games have basically was among like the people who had created like the video that again. So people might have been like exceptionally strong at high level pro hunters who might have gathered up orders like a rare and rare and like extremely rare and valuable items from all across like the real world. And with that absolute and then to like only to eventually put all that great number of items into that secondary rally game to that way create that absolute need within like the people across the world to that only play effectively running game and get all those that which is then valuable items. Because like there is that need number of items like all being first across within like the running game. The game is available. So that's like only to maybe even trick like the hunter from across the world into thinking that like finding such rare items in that the real world will be a lot of that finding those and make finding and like using those items within like the real game and that way to like maybe even trick all the players across like the world into that way that like really like the fact of that like there will be all these like valuable items within like the real game to like create turn that into like a huge factor in that fighting that alone itself that rather than like on top of like the separate and that absolute challenge of that object like if like and also be able to like complete like the simulation career running game that no one has ever completed before which I'm referring would be alive and I'm referring that it would be like most likely naturally that the team might have definitely team like the only person who might have like actually fully completed the career running game. And even after completing the career running game, they might have been someone who might have decided to like stay and live for like the remaining of his life within like the GreedIsle game and might also not like return back into like the real world of the legal pyramid. And basically in short, like my making theory and and then I'm still getting on to like basically right now it is that guy who wants that ball and it was like the thing that he put out totally like that form like the elimination of like the maybe for like one of like might have been with himself or like one of the like team members that might have like the striker like the that new big player by asking him if like he might have sort of along with his like group and towards like while targeting that new big player and like they might have talked to him and might have totally contracted him by asking him repeatedly asking him to like join the team or pleading but like repeatedly asking him to like join the team to join the group and everything so like while this might be going on like that leader of the team that might have still to that showed up might have been standing behind it and might have actually placed that at the time of on on him and basically that way that comes from that and like that user that way but when that absolute stealth like that if that player like the other player might have placed that stealthy that time of that onto that new player so like the new player might have not realized it and throw them much and music then that might be how like right now that new player ended up getting eliminated and instantly that all the binds up and it will mean either like all the cards or like the card the it might be like the binder along with like the cards that might have straight away might have due to that effect of that spell the unique nature of that spell might have straight away might have fallen into that instantly might have the moment like that might have got eliminated like instantly this might have happened as that uh all the cards he might have had like and well as like with like binder might have straight away fallen instantly might have gotten like transported to might have teleported and appeared in like the hands of like that year uh, playoff guy or of the group might have been what might have happened. Or like I was saying, either it might have been like Binder that might have fallen into his like position, or like it might have been like Card Element that the Medusa might have played away bottom. It might have appeared in like the card pocket of that leader player who might have taken the life of that Medusa. Might have been what might have happened. That might be very interesting. So that is like only one possibility that number current. The other possibility that number is something for like even among like the players like there might be the same at for like even empty binders as well. It's just new. Also like a brain or binders without any cards at all. Like even would be still having that demand and need among like other experienced players. Other players who will be like extremely weak, but like would be a bit experienced in that and would have spent a bit of time within like the GreedIsle game is also really unfair because like I'm thinking like among like the players that would be like stealing cards of like other players like I'm giving there will be all sorts of such players who would be like who be stealing cards of that other player by like using like this like unique kind of like by stealing away like their card first and basically overpowering and defeating that target player and basically then by still keeping them alive and basically then stealing away their card and basically placing it on their own binders and basically then like placing some sort of like a spell unique spell onto the target, which would be like separating like the target's like connection that to be the target connection from like the target's like finder as well as like the target like card and basically that way that and then like there will be the those players after like doing this much like and after stealing like the cards of like the target like there will be like players who will be like then eliminating like the target to be the target. So like at that point numbers of the putting and shooting them and trying to show that like at that point even if like the target player if it a target player is like eliminated even then like the those cards like the target player who would have got stolen those cards that would have gotten stolen won't be getting exploited along with the target is like also like such a unique spell as well might exist in other frames. So like under there will be also other kind of like an even more villainistic kind of like players who will be that doing like the very same thing uh, while stealing like the cards of another player, but like they will be also like villainistic desiring to that instead of like eliminating that the target after like stealing that the target or the target card like instead of like eliminating that the target defeat the target like there will be that players who like only keep the target alive while only destroying like the target's like binders and that way like leaving like the target to totally stuck up within like superior running game without even a binder at that point. Uh, so that will be there would be like such even more extremely realistic players as well out there, especially with the English. And this is like the other possibility that happens with the maybe like the possibility that like for like the since it was like a newly type of laptop targeted by according to my was very by this lab, and it might have been that the might that newly might have been that to be targeted by this tag was like right now after gone and to watch that join stream like and the different like and the only other possibility that I'm different is for like maybe like that elimination effect that newly came for just like empty kind of like maybe that newly even that point not having not even a single card at all, but like just only his like empty binder with him. Yet like even that empty binder of like that newly having a match among like a bunch of like other players out there who would have probably had the binder like destroyed and left to like suffer like the GreedIsle goal. So like that way, like them targeting, like them setting up their place in like the city close to like the entrance of like the where like the newbies usually entering end up into like the GreedIsle game so that like they could target like the news and basically would be able to like steal away like the steal away like the binders of like the newbies. So like it was just like other possibility and like as for like why like the newbie player might have got of killing it. It's also my very encouraging right now. My particularly interruption right now has for like that player that's like right now being born and converting to just being like I'm preparing that the scenario to happen right now, which I'm looking for trying to see that me Kindwa would be instantly finding him the pages for him instantly turning up and instantly interacting with like Gon and Kindwa and definitely that the fact that like that player instantly was able to like recognize that he was precisely towards like exactly Gon and Kindwa and instantly being able to like overhearing exactly that even though there was like a crowd around like the eliminated like the fact that like that person that other player precisely and like with all those people who would have gathered around especially with the NPCs and get like the fact that like that player precisely showed up towards like where God and Kiddo was standing like that itself like it was one thing that like Kiddo was bit of a kind of that sort of feeling that of like the possibility that it wouldn't be just like sheer coincidence that like he showed up exactly there and all of that like them right with them God and Kiddo uh, to ask one and to get the an experiment of it, but to definitely will be feeling that suspicion, something simply feeling that positive effect that possibility of that we've been having that feeling that suspicion towards like that player who right now have like asking Don to join his team and I'm referring that Silva straight away agreeing along with Don. Don definitely would be straight away agree because that Don would be totally calling for that right and straight away agree. That nothing gone I'm going to find a straight away agree with that one. But like I'm showing in the case of Kilua, like the scenario that I'm looking for, like Kilua, even while finding it extremely suspicious, Kilua as well agreeing along with that point is going there, okay. And that way, like I'm looking for that, but that at that point, that player will be telling one and Kilua like follow him and maybe taking them to that canary way, kind of like a place, like the scenario that I put the protocol. And that would be like his team would be certainly my personal impression. So that in that times that like they would be following like that player is like I'm different definitely Tilwa would be okay having this net guard up and that Tilwa would be totally like having his like eyes on both Ron as well as that other player whom they would be following certainly knows right because like Tilwa would only fitting into like the civil body that he maybe instead only pulling something on spot and trying to like pick up and usually attack us. Or use the or trying to like get some well on that. So like I'm going to do it only putting such a possibility. So like so that like if such scenario happens for Kiddo to be able to protect you on it's like as well as like for Kiddo to be able to like counter attack by protecting on like for Kiddo to also like be able to like be prepared and counter attack against like that that player play myself after that kid one going to go in his space. It was like I'm doing Tinwa doing so we would definitely say that Tinwa being him like somewhat throw with like Tinwa and so on would be able to like get more of like knowledge about like the career island eventually regardless of whether she ends up like uh pulling something on them or not. Right? We get them there Tinwa would be doing that like talk up to like join this game. It's definitely Tinwa will definitely they having like absolutely no intention at all of that joining this team get like amazing into our days only having the plan to like only through that interactions they will be having as like they will need to be trying to look up to get all the information that and knowledge that Silva needs about like the career and this and basically for them to Silva to like at that point select the client to select offer at that point in front of the skills and tell him that they are not joining even if he doesn't pull and pick one like and right doesn't write like a that going actually be along the lines that in Silva's mind Silva will be already planning the new career so like definitely I'm looking like that player taking Silva and go on into this like alleyway like area within that city and they are able to like introducing John to like to this like team and basically by John and the strategy will be starting from that point on and basically the team members on the different will be enthusiastic sitting on a fake act and would be enthusiastically talking towards that John and Silva. And so John and Silva and God specifically will be falling for that as well and maybe that enthusiastically talking back to them the scenario when Silva will be sharply having to like guard up and will be noticing looks like player the near player like basically slowly walking uh, towards the side and basically approaching that one standing right behind that one and Kilo and that Kilo will only noticing that. So like this moment. So like at that point Kilo will only absolutely perfect. It's a Kilo like assassin skills and like Kilo will be actually absolutely perfect that basically that he will be right now able to pull something on that like the would be definitely what we do this city and that exactly happened and we can attending at like using that spell such a kind of like a spell on like Killua and definitely Killua usually counters that with like Killua like target of spells like the scenario that I'm doing. So like the two spells flashing and like the cancelling out like the scenario that I'm doing and straight away like at that point since like Killua one will be shocked at that point because like one will be totally straight away trusting that guy and it's like also like one won't be plus the scenario is like the scenario where he's elected to at that point that okay straight away using his black man force and brings straight away instantly and at that point itself I can believe that those like team members of like that other player would be like straight away trying to like attack Bond or like it's like the scenario that is like going straight away at that point is like bringing out his man powers as well and taking out a bunch of men as well as Kilo as well using his black man powers and like taking out like the lead aspect is like the scenario that I was so like still up and going until I'm not eliminating them, but like they will easily all for and they and badly in that the scenario that I avoid. And then also for like the interrogation beginning with the one. And that way you are extracting out all the knowledge from that player and reflecting about like the career and game and basically like and like that way like he would also be revealing us to like why he would have according to my total initiative with that player that would have taken the eliminated like the new player so like like why he did it what was the need behind and then behind so the elimination of the new player like it will make things for him and so the interrogation making him reveal all that so like so scenario that way like Silva and Bond being able to be getting that initial set of like knowledge, cultural knowledge needed for like the beginning stage of like the career and again for like grown until one to be like well prepared for like to survive in that the beginning stage of like the career and again grown until one probably getting that out of that the like that player stage like right now I think grown until one to like join different like begin with scenario where I'm going to hold the topic and my first and like actually my question to the person right now like the review the city the like shall sort of is at the left like actually right now and during that particular city which is like the second location direction from which like Kilwa and well as like the other Kilwa and Gon as well as like the other movie players like so the like Kilwa and the other movie players has while entering into like the rear island game the two direction from which like they have felt that strong feeling of like being watched like everything like while one direction might have led to like with like one direction leading one and to like to like underflow the city like and then like the other direction might be through like this current city where like shell photo thing as well as like super are in of like the city of like Rujiketa. It definitely might be the case definitely might be the so like shall as well as SST as well might have followed like the uh, follow like the whole direction of that wrong direction being one, and that way might have ended up in that shooting with that shooting. Right now, might have been what might have happened in the framework. So like even while Gon and Killua back then had played like the of their focus so feel like the fact which direction they have to pick like I'm just bring especially to that Gon had pick a different direction. Silva has picked a different direction from like a different the reason for like while Ron picking his direction might have been only just like don't like just don't randomly picking a direction. But in the case of Silva, different that there might be an actual reason for like Silva picking Silva's direction, like the other direction, which might that reason might be that like even while that strong feeling of being watched that was like coming from these two directions, like everything like might have been that Silva might have picked like the direction from which like the feeling of being watched was like the strong it's definitely my secondary empathy. So like I'm define like even like the traps and like the greater number of players as well as greater number of like players like really shooting to that trap like the newbies might all be present within in like the maybe city might be like the case when compared to like under to the Silva like one Silva right now. That's my secondary empathy. The field might be very under things like since like things as well as patients has entered into like the career and even for this earlier like I'm covering the news by now things as well as patients might have also like gone in like the direction of like shared and other sense might have already made it to like city as well as might have completed like the task within like the completed like the things that like patent as well as like might have felt like doing within like Nairobi Bota city and might have proceeded on ahead to like the city after proceeding the city in that direction might be like the city where like I'm preferring right now in like the present film as well as patients with the which definitely my thing very important. So the different like there to be like an extreme difference in like the sprint and like the number of like other players and like the dangers as well. Like I'm looking while in Rubicota City as well as and Kyoto City, like there are only other than the players like while there are only any other game related dangers like awaiting them in these two cities and this is only this like these two cities being like the beginning to this might be the case especially in our framework. So uh the city after both and also the city I think Rubicota City will be having that not only players themselves like waiting and like kind of like waiting to like with that absolute trust set for like the new players that will be making it there but like also like the city or like town or like village whatever comes after that as well after like these big cities would be the city or like village like or like forest like regardless of whatever aspect like some like that location itself will be having like a lot of trust and danger only so part of that the gameplay like the game itself it's like my theory and correction like the name of the reinvention right now is for like this like player who born and to like to join the team. Like right now we don't really like about like it being due to like the trouble that he knows about like that player who attacked born and to from zone of from the sky and attack that is definitely not sure but in actual game but the reason he knows that player would be due to like that player most likely being part of the like team will be just like team member just definitely not in the game. So like this collectively this will be all part of that collective plan in the Milena to correct because like I'm looking at it might be the player who right now wants to want to do it and join his team might also might have that sense of that team or not. And that way might have been how like we might have thrown it like sometimes like we might have like spot of like Ron and he might have straight away recognize and realize that acceptance of beat up and power is like Ron and Silva. Definitely Ron and Silva in and power to be fast a bit of a stronger to like this guy who wants like someone to do it to join his team, the team of the ranking. Yet like I'm just like from to certain extent of like experience of like and spent within like the living areas of the video and game, he might have been able to get this like feeling that basically when the Gon and Silva are accepting is strong, like he might have seen like the possibility of like Gon and Silva being like not having any idea at all about like how about like the Korean island game about like the spells or anything. Even though there are newbies like even among the newbies like he might have quite surveyed doing surveillance and checking all the newbies that he might have felt that like Gon and Silva as like the only two players from like the newbie with like the possibility of like having like the weakest knowledge comes into like the working of the GreedIsle. Consider like anything about like the working of the GreedIsle game or about the spell cards or everything. The game of the surrender. So he might have had this like strong feeling. So like to check that out and to confirm it, like he might have sent that one of the selecting member who might have been like that and that might be the reason for like that guy showing up from that guy and basically straight away him like with such urgency that checking like the free pocket of that kilo and everything might have been definitely showing up there while being well and fully aware that Gon and Kilo are like far superiorly stronger than him. But to that, but like he might not only be also expecting that of the possibility of like Gon and Kilo are having no idea about like spell cards or anything. So like to confirm that like he might be the reason for like him quickly checking that it was like proof of that and basically finding out that empty, especially my secondary angle. So like in actuality he might have been totally putting on that player might have been totally putting on a fake test like he had shown up to that basically actually still gone and kill was like cards when in actuality since like gone and kill are like you might have seen that like the moment like gone and kill and along with all the players that entered like they felt like then being was like so he might have only and with like group method only saying that like they had absolutely wanting to do had absolutely no card without definitely my career. So definitely it might have been to like confirm solely to like confirm that basically that like Bond and Kilua are like have like absolutely no idea at all about like anything with the real game from that connected like Spencer or anything. So it's definitely my personal theory and prediction and it might have been true his praise spell, like the praise spell that he had placed on Kilua that like I'm like exactly like their leader which might be this guy actually wants that Bond and Kilua to go to the was like precisely also able to like make it in time towards like one and Kilua. Exactly towards like one and Kilua and all that might have been what might have happened in actuality that behind the scenes that he might consider it a person. So like I'm wondering right now what like the like guy might be after might be like this player might be after maybe might be like he might be after like the MP binder of like Ron and you can do it. Definitely 16 to MP binders of that one I will like for the strong possibility that I'm taking for the project. Because of that, my earlier prediction that like there might be players out there, dynastic players out there who might just like casually just like after like stealing away like the target player who is actually keeping not really keeping that player and a target player alive, but keeping them alive while also uh, destroying that villains in destroying that their binders and basically leaving them still like suffer in like during the world of the island. So that these the team members of like, this guy who wants like foreign to like join this team might have like a bunch of like team members without like any without that binders typically made in the remember. So that to steal one and your binders maybe empty binders might be that uh, therefore, strategical plan is definitely in my personality and question right now. So like definitely in my personality and correction right now with like the guy who the player who wants that one and to work that join team that having like the majority of the same videos like so definitely my personality and question for like right now for like those two players among like the newbie players who didn't want who refused to like who rejected their offer to like join and basically didn't even want to like hear anything from them. I'm definitely those two players might be like the only two players among like the present set of like newbie players along with like Ron and Kilo. Those two players alone might be like the players who might have done to a certain extent of like a thorough study, at least about like the beginning stages of like the island game. So like I'm looking like someone who might have reached like the checkpoint area of like the island game and might have left like the island game might be like connected to those two like might be connected to like those two like music players that leave up the and like they might have like asking about like the career game and like about the details and what to like look out for and everything right of like the beginning and everything. So like I'm assuming that player who might have already able to like the checkpoint and left like the career game might have revealed and told them about like basically this thing where like right off the bat like the moment they will be entering into like the career game about like the feeling of like being what like them straight away experiencing that and basically that like the way to see itself like a bunch of players like basically showing up like the positive like players showing up with like asking them to like join the team with by like putting and all that being like that absolute trap stealthy trap that basically along the lines of everything that experienced player who might have reached like to that point and the courage like completely might have been fed up with like the extreme dangers and might have been overwhelmed with like the extreme difficulty of the physical and we might have left after like struggling with playing to that place in like the set point, you might have totally abandoned such like the serve to that play to complete that particular end game and that on the surface the feeling of so like it might be such a player might be related to like those good newbie players, and they might have asked them, you know, to relate such information to those newbie players, and this might be the reason for like those two newbie players alone like rejecting their offer to join and basically to that join and not even bothering to like even hear anything from them from this like player who right now have like gotten like all this great the majority of like the newbie players to like totally to join this stage. Definitely not the would definitely be a scrap set for like the newbie players. It's definitely my percentage in production that I'm thinking of. Definitely my percentage in production as for like the other responsibilities that I'm taking for like that player of like players who rejected like the offer of like this guy, this player who's like getting more than newbie players to like join his team. Like I'm going to bring like those two players who rejected their offer. Like the other possibility that I'm going to bring for like maybe those two players to specifically things as well as taken. So like maybe like while they had enjoyed it to like the very running game that everything, they might have also like picked the direction of that and the same direction as like Ron and Kilo and might have sort of to like the very same city right now as that of like Ron and Kilo are there. So at that point itself like this player might have spent it's like it's like other team member to like proceed to set that trap and like to lure them into like joining his like team like the name of that into a trap with like the name of joining his team. So like I'm saying that Finch and Peyton like I'm different definitely through out their experience and journey as like random group members like they might have seen that all sorts of like tricky people that like I'm different definitely the things and pattern as solely development being and group members like they will be having that much of that experience dealing with like having a help with like all sorts of people in that real life difference that like something one with them might have been easily able to like see not only like the one like it might have been not only like the fact that like the person who had like tried to like get maybe like Vincent Payton to like join his team itself that Vincent Payton totally easily able to tell that like him trying to like break them is like one remote possibility that one possibility that I'm looking and like the other possibility maybe that it might have been a scenario where like might be they like Payton and extreme more confidence that I'm looking like the moment like that guy might have that player might have sort of asking them to join the team. Like at that point, the self determined thing as well as Peyton might have noticed that the extreme gap in like the levels of strength between them and like that player when it comes to that turn and power with like the Peyton and things having such extreme superior turn powers. So straight away, like he might have not interested like in as well as Peyton and usually that possibility to be in the reason for that and not even just ordering to even listen to him at all might be like the possibilities that I'm looking for. Like, so like to select all the possibilities that I'm looking for like those two players who had rejected like the offer to join maybe being like Prince and still like my procedure is mentioned. So like if that's the case then I'm looking for something like that me for like the next town or like next city or like the very next town or like the very next city or like the very next village or like the very next spot like whatever it may be after like the and the town where like gone and cinema are right now in that and that eventually once they will be making it to that's the very next thing that will be on the space in that direction whatever would be next like while Donald will be making it that different maybe like them totally running into that sin and Satan. There's like possibility that I'm looking for different because like the second town whether it's like a town city or cost or whatever like the second thing after like the current city would be like where like the real difficult where like the real difficulty would be like begin to like start within like the real again that and that would only be a fraction of like the coding critique of that which might the which would be existing within that real idea especially like so like I'm doing that way things as well as station maybe like according to my presentation where like they might have usually go through like the first current city where like going to the city in that and them not being able to do that in like the next location that will be in the after next current city after then some meeting in the this like current city like the very next location that they would be heading into Papa them not being able to like push and move through so easily with like about movies that I'm looking for. So like that way taking them time to like drop their next guide their next location. So like that resulting in like maybe by the time Paul and Silva will be making it to that like next location like then so they are running into that things and later. there's definitely a possibility that numbers will look for a big and representation. But the emerging theory and prediction right now as for like the player who was born and to join his team and his like friends would like to remember as well. With it right now stacking up lies on top of lies definitely but what they might be right now doing is definitely my case is very urgent because like definitely that front team member of that player took that revelation in saying that basically there are absolutely no spells within the activity running game that can hurt or like eliminate another player. That would be like the biggest like instantly by very unfortunate. Especially with like the running game being like infamous sports like swing range of nature and like even like with like people with like so many people getting eliminated creating like the ranges of like the running game and it's like no one absolutely being able to that and that with like sort of like the real world, according to like the real world, with like absolutely no one having completed the video running game and always like I'm definitely in such a danger game like I'm under the all sorts of sense out there that will like totally not only just that with extremely dangerous spells out there within like the game world of the video running game. It's like such high intensity and all sorts of healing powers would be having like such spells range of extremely dangerous spells which would be able to like not only another player but also to like will be able to like will be having like the power to like make another player suffer to the extreme as well as will be able to like eliminate other player. There will be all sorts of stuff in the dangerous spells. This is definitely my looking very important. So like I'm like right now with like that team member of like the guy who wants like wanted to learn and all of them to like join that team like him or actually saying that like, there are no spells such in a bold manner like him straight away saying that like there are absolutely no spells that can like cut or like uh eliminate another player like and that would be like that would be solely based on the confidence that they believe that like all these like newbie players that they have gathered up in the name of like joining the team have newbie have absolutely no knowledge at all about like any of like within like the running game. Especially my concern that they are all maybe still like extreme and so that it that so like an that the front as well as that other players because they think that like they will like usually manipulate and trick up into like basically stealing all of their blinders or like basically they might definitely like these players like even though they are maybe players might all by now maybe stack not like a bunch of money cards as well. It also have the possibility that so that basically like to steal that blinder as well as their money cards and like I'm doing especially things like Ron and Kilo already have got a single target as card like I'm saying maybe like other players as well. Uh, other newbie players as well might have managed to like get by now managed to like get one of these cards as well. So like about so like to feel that cards as well. Would be definitely since like collectively since there are such great number of like newbie players that right now like basically like have like the percent of like those two players such the intent to like join them like and definitely like they will be thinking that an instant like tricking and elimination so such a manner like an instant swooping like they will be able to like get so many cards that instantly from if they trick and that uh, eliminate and basically steal away like the cards the collective cards of all these like great number of movie players who be around the line split and stickly that front as well as like the other player who is trying to get them to join their team. Will be putting on that as well. They actually like will be trying to like realistically as the definitely my person theory and that it's sitting on to. So like what's the name of the Real Madrid right now has got like the player who wants like Ron and Silva to like join his team as well as like his friend for them to like in such a short time to be able to like gather like almost like the entire piece of like the native players by their side and those are definitely to go through that they are actual team members that it's definitely not very machine that I'm still thinking about that's definitely that guy who had showed up from that player who has showed up from like his sky and put the phrase on like Silva phrase fell on Silva which is just one among like the remaining team original team members of like these two players who would have straight away like the moment they saw like the newbie players like entering that game straight away then always like original team members were there solely to like put the phrase on like the newbie players as like the newbie players would be like picking up and would be on their way to, from that point on, like from like, the moment like the newbie players will be entering into like the career again from that point, since like with like the feeling of being watched like basically among like the newbie players that if we like will be like walking towards like the that direction like when that basically and like the newbie players certainly each and every time it won't be like newbie players all going together like it would be like them like some of them going ahead and some of them like basically going one after and some would be like the case where I come to like so that absolute and like with like slight variation in like their direction as well as also certainly also so like it is that absolute that like they lead to that lead like these two players might have spent like all of like their team members like simultaneously to that show up from like the sky towards like each of like these newbie players and they move to and each of them might have placed like the race spell onto like each of like the newbie players and this might be the sole reason for like that this player as well as like the friends in such a short time having gathered up all the newbie players right now in like towards that in like the name of like having them join the team. So it's definitely my personal aspiration and definitely, I'm preferring like that among like the newbie players, like I'm preferring one among them. I'm preferring like that guys who had that basically laughed during like the examination for like to be selected for like the GreedIsle game. Like I'm preferring like that guy. I'm preferring like his presence as well right now among like the newbie players who who have decided to like join who have who are in like the presence of like those other two players that like been to like join numbers of like that one player who had basically left during like numbers of like during like the grade and selection exam like numbers of that person who's like still person here as well so they don't be well fully aware might be well fully aware that like what those two players would be right now I can think would be like a trap. It's definitely my preferring person. So like but during that player who had laughed like another like he did only extremely orphan he would have to an extent of like knowledge already about like the grade and again from someone related to of close to him who might have already played like the career running game and like left like the career running game permanently after like reaching like the checkpoint and to the real good. And he might still that person might still be relevant. It might be that person that might have told him about like the dangers lying away within like the career running game, about like the initial dangers that or like a bunch of things with the initial ages of like the career running game. So like this would be the reason as well of like this like knowledge as well as like extreme more confidence it's also like a positive, which like you might be role having, especially in the range. So if we kind of have with the new in the range, so definitely he basically his presence right now among like the music candidates, music players like under the will be solely going to like him, totally waiting for like for those two players to like basically eventually execute their part onto like the newbie players so that like at that point like for him to like totally show up in front of like all the remaining newbie players might be his intent is definitely not to remember. And then the maybe for like that girl as well. That girl maybe player member as well, maybe possibly like being also like aware of like the current situation, not situation but like the current attempt of like so to players to like get all the new players to like join their team being an absolute trap. About which like that girl as well possibly being aware of skills will be like putting on a fake act so that okay to destroy to eventually like destroy all that hope so that like she might be feeling that like doing so will be make her feel or like a moving like she might be like irritated with like players putting up such trap that basically that she might have showed up with that as good intent by maybe while being fully aware of that as good intent to to teach like these two players who might be setting up that trap and let them by destroying that trap and badly offering and defeat them. With like the other proposition that I'm looking for that the minimum question right now as for like the team member of that player who want like to need to like join that talking about like from the start that like they will be having this reduction rate and like I'm even this will be all like they're setting up of like their front to like to feel like they need to not destroy like the confidence of like the newbies and feel like they are in like such an extreme situation and they have such an extreme of start so that like the that way to like totally to trick like the newbies into seeing like those two players who are trying to like get them to join their who are like who might be totally pretending to like get them to like join their team as like their absolute beacon of hope and so that to increase the possibility of those who have gathered to definitely find their decisions to and definitely join their come to find their decision to definitely join that's the team of those two players and that so that at that point they will be so yeah really having that confidence that they will be easily able to eliminate each individual one of them and basically steal away mind they can and then steal away their card and basically then or their part and given them and then eliminate each and one of them would be along the lines I'm thinking that they will be only those two players will be the only thing and then should be all part of the right. My particular reason. So that's the main of the very I'm thinking right now. It's for that player who wants the new just to join basically it's talking about there being short player front of but for even that as well would be an absolute exceptionally mandatory effort. Definitely the intent would be for basically through this choose create to finally tell the new that is maybe every team their team together they would be able to capture those exact for playoff and those are present in that city. So I'm doing that would be the plan. So that basically at that point in the name of searching for the playoff and those becoming them tell it the newbies to totally click up and basically at that point I was looking they will be going with a bunch of newbies and basically for that point for them newbies would be distracted and something for the playoff and uh, would be not even a single club and would even exist or even bother to even come close to entrance to the cities and areas near to the entrance into the trade and it's definitely my personal impression that I'm building out definitely because I'm still thinking about the impression that as for the card limit I'm looking definitely as for all the entire case the cards I'm looking definitely number to at for it and that's the starting the beginning areas I'm looking all the way to the checkpoint I'm looking even in halfway portion, halfway area of the entirety of the rewriting game that including this would be even closer to as compared to even in the area close to the halfway checkpoint kind of an area. The halfway of the entire map of the rewriting game even in the halfway distance I'm looking the card that can be present even in that halfway checkpoint the patient will be having a limit either around 100 is definitely my good injury operation. So until then all the cards until then would be the different would be having from the beginning of the game to reaching that halfway checkpoint I'm looking all the cards would be having card limits that way higher than 100. So definitely would be the case the game and it will be beyond the checkpoint of getting that the card limit of the cards will be gradually reducing from 100 to even the card limit reaching eventually reaching single digit numbers and that will be happening while towards the end portions of the games will be when the card numbers will be gradually decreasing all the way to reaching single digit numbers. It's definitely my preference. So this will be how the cards across the grid and all the different cards across the grid and game will be uh, definitely will be presented in such a way along the map of thing that the grid and game. It's definitely my preference. So things Dawn and all of them are in the very first cities from the end of the grid and game. I'm definitely preferring the cards there all the cards there will be having such high limit that far beyond 100 and definitely I'm looking definitely the total number of grid and players currently often than playing with who are alive and playing with the next period and again won't be even nowhere near to that total limit of or greater limit of that all the cards in the big stages of the period and again would be have would that leave my good career and hence I'm also talking no player front of who would be genuinely players who who will be playing the game that have the intent to definitely complete at the game and collect all the cards I'm putting such players won't be would be definitely only such extreme players player handles will be only present in the second half the even the for the part end of the second half of beyond the farthest even after the checkpoint the farthest end of the period island game location areas would be the only area where the player handles will be provided. definitely my preference. So like definitely the player hunters would be that has absolutely no need or like you won't even go up to like basically to uh so from all the way from there to like running back to like the initial areas of like the game just to like only eliminate a bunch of like beginner like newbie players just so that like basically and even doing so won't be enabling them to like get those like extreme rare cards that like they will be after definitely it should be because of continuous generation of like numbers of definitely those like rare cards will be far beyond like even after like the checkpoint like on the fastest thing like the checkpoint is definitely went to them. So like definitely it's still in the map of the representation that like the sports like sports focus being given by this players to like the concept of like player hunters and everything right now is actually beginning city itself of the GreedIsle game will be an absolute trap and like set to like totally potentially like steal away like the maybe like Chelsea by the zone like the card of that the new players. It's definitely the story is such internet or like about them like shows like it's like these like players will be like telling that absolute like about like the person of four exactly for like player front of in that city and everything. That's definitely my personal journey impression that I'm thinking of. So that's definitely my personal journey impression right now. And for like the three players like saying that they have different allies and like put to turn designated that's all by only these three players alone are visible to check the news and basically right now. And basically the fact that like these three players are still in like the very first round from like the very end of like the entire thing that they're game. So that definitely my secondary impression that I'm sitting on this definitely that it will be such an absolute flop and a lie and like a trap set for all the newbies. It effectively my secondary impression that I'm sitting on this. So definitely the government all those details will be an absolute lie and like the only thing that there will be like instead of like 53 um, instead of like 67 like designated cards and like 53 allies like I'm putting that. So I think they might only be having like these three will be in total their team will be that of like a single digit number like on the like at most it will be like nine members in total that they would be even having in their entire team and basically definitely a top card like I'm putting that how still they will be having that at most that 15 so like 15 to like maybe that almost around like 15 cards would be like the total. Their total cards that like after spending a lot of time, they may have spend a lot of time to then like the grade island game, struggling to like reach like the checkpoint and do the game would be like the only goal that needs my experience. So that is so like uh the reality that I'm looking for would not like that land. I think the total team numbers itself would be like 110 and basically the total number of cards itself collectively when it comes while adding up like the three cards as well as like the designated cards in total it would be like but like adding up the cards of like each and every single member of like the single digit team which might be the case like would be a total of like around 15 cards. It's definitely my very impression. So like all the rest like would be like that are good plug and like and a trap set for to steal all the binders as well as like the whatever fuel cards should be remaining within like the binders of like the so it's certainly my contemporary impression. And basically like according to my contemporary impression that itself would be like the reason for like these three like players like still remaining as presence in like the very first city from like the very entrance of like the entire case like the Great Running definitely my contemporary impression that I'm sitting on. So that's definitely my contemporary impression right now as for like the players plan to like have like their allies default the card for like this like the self would be like the main one of like the main trap. So definitely my that they would be setting it definitely not correct. So like I'm in the name of that basically like so fighting and basically collecting like creating their own monopoly and collecting all the sequence cards and everything from like the flex of all player hunters that should be all allied. Like I'm looking at their plan would be to like definitely to like in the name of like their collective mission to like win like the Great Island game and take over and complete the Great Island game together. Like I'm looking at definitely what they will planning right now would be definitely in the name of that putting all the card funds that perspective and in the same treatment of under like the profession of like the allies. Like I'm looking right now itself for like that player, one of like the three team members of like that player right now asking for all the newbies to like to give them their card for like safety thing for that like as long as they have their card with the newbies have their card with them like it would be out there, and while they would be like launching their going in on their whole plan to like feel like the all those like defensive cards from like the player and everything like during this time like basically uh, while they will be searching for like the defensive card like they have like their own card with them like then that's the possibility of like it being stolen like exactly like how like that I think that's how that one of those players have already said right now. You'll be saying that again. And on the different like so like in order for that absolute protection like on the different like him totally asking them that all of the news to like totally hand over stuff that they have in their possession to them so that like they could like totally those players could like totally secure their allies for like safe keeping. And then like they can all set out for like to collect all the different base cards and basically to lab fight and lab steal using spells and basically lab steal also different cards from like our players and create like their monoplay along the line. Definitely would be right now what I'm looking for things for that one among like three players like right now setting up the trap and telling to that all of the newbie players right now. It's that scenario that I'm looking for. So definitely my very I'm looking for like don't straight away like straight away believing them and straight away would be able to hand over with like this like that Kindle card that don't have right now. Uh, but like I'm looking at that point of the computer definitely for like to do almost like a stopping point and basically that Kindle are telling one that like Kindle are only exposing their heart at that point of like scenario that I'm looking for and I wouldn't just speak into like I'm looking at that point like the moment like I'm looking like the scenario to be that one among like the three players like asking for all of their maybe cards for like using like at that point they come to different like their plan as practical plan to like trap and steal away the card of like all the newbies like who they themselves would be they don't having that fear again because like definitely the newbies would be definitely would be the more stronger when it comes to like their manpower when compared to that manpower of all these three players who definitely my very so definitely my very ambitious for like the practical that trap they will be setting up to that way stealthy steal like and steal like the cards of all the newbies that will be failing at that point itself while like one of the players will be asking for the newbie card all of the native cards select the scenario that enable all the correct animal to the reimbursement. So that the legal and prediction right now as for like that one player right now warning that the music as for like there being players that have tried to like leave the redesigning game and will be able to for many years. Like those players will be exactly themselves. It's the limit. And those three players themselves would definitely be those players like especially since like they also know better like definitely things like better because gone and had gone and has injured into the real game like better having more of their is how like basically the previous set of like the earlier previous set of Greed Island like selected candidates that better like the past had basically sent into like the Greed Island game performing so poorly and not getting eliminated either and that way taking away and wasting away to free for like to play like the Green Island game for better for like new like for like new candidates to actually do the Green Island that space being lost due to that these players who sold due to that them being extremely weak like not being able to complete like, the game and leave the game and neither them not getting eliminated as well that basically that those players to get exactly these very three players that's right now saying all this thing that wanna hit and all the other movies right now. Definitely my take pretty impressive. So definitely like the reason like I think that maybe like or I think like that has to be it, or like I think that I don't know that basically definitely that the reason like the Green Island game selection exam being even conducted, being that or even taking the decision to like even conduct staff that with that process of like grade and game play selection exam itself, in which like one I to do a participate testing and one like basically the reason for such an exam even existing, even being started by bad or it is only need to like use three players to them to lose by percentage everything because like them because of them being weak and like them totally freaking maybe that bad and like matter of like maintenance like uh, into like entering into like the running it things strong and basically that way like basically them performing poorly and basically wasting away like that concept value within like the characters within like the control or like of like the running game them to like especially my particular impression as for like what like the actuality of like the situation might be, especially my different. And so like I'm still taking my impression that like those players who have tried like they believe for like the phrase to leave and which you have tried and have failed and like basically for years like would be these exact three players and that would be like the only goal right now like and these three players would be like bluffing and lying and trying to trick for the newbie players into like handing them over like the start score like take it uh, so that like that way through such a feeling like stealthy kind of like tricking and feeling like these players like these three players who sit only feeling absolutely hopeless of like any possibility of like that being able to like escape from like the real running game just would be like most likely to be a desperate attempt at trying to like basically or the course of great number of years like them still would be like not be even confident that even through such a manner that they would ever be able to like lose the game but still like this would be like the only way that like they might have figured that they would even be able to like make any cards at all. It that will be my personal and prediction because like I'm looking at beyond where these three like uh, players would be standing in like the very first city, like right close to like the end of like beyond everything beyond that would be way beyond their league. It's definitely my career prediction. So that because of the reason that they would have like the past, there might have been even more members and like they in like the past might have proceeded further ahead from this very city and like the next place that they had gone to like during the competition and difficulty and the range of might have been so extreme that like they might have lost a lot of their number that's like definitely might be the end. So like since then they might have instantly run back and trying to like escape from that location and escape to like this very to the new city uh close to the end of the film of the rainbow. And since then like they might have never left. They might have never had like the courage to like leave that city and proceed ahead again ever. It's definitely my good career. So like while being trapped in the city and only while being unable to like leave like the video dialing game, this might be like the strategy that like finding they might have figured to like the movies and if like this will and to hope for that eventually over the course of a great number of years might allow them to like eventually be able to like live the game which of the different deep down they themselves deep down that they will be even aware that like won't be working out in such an extremely difficult game like the player and games where like I'm definitely prepping like even in order to like reach like the set point itself like they definitely have to that proceed beyond like the current beginning city that they are in close to like the definitely my country so like deep down them all will be knowing that from the deep down definitely not the but like they will be totally willing to like uh, would be like totally unwilling to like to accept that and then looking at they will be totally holding on to feeling of that kind of like feeling of comfort that they will be doing just like such kind of like a freaking feeling of like when you start might eventually at some point end up in like then somehow miraculously being able to like leave like the real and engage with the league or the damage. So then this might be definitely what would be going on. For like with like these three players for like the great number of past years, definitely my person theory and production right now. Definitely my person theory and production right now. So that according to that player, like there being plenty of cards, spell cards like allowance level like exits like the great and so in that as well would be like the next slide. Because like my person theory and production definitely that like definitely like it would even be through like spell cards that like a player would uh, even be existing, like even be able to like exit like the Great Island game. That was my question very interesting because like in order to like exit like the Great Island game, there would be like a specific condition that needs to be met. And I'm looking it to be like two conditions. That one condition might be like in like the entire piece of like the map in like the Great Island game, like like the halfway distance of like the entirety of like the map, like the Great Island game reaching that halfway distance, like that halfway distance will definitely be a checkpoint, especially my very emergency. So like one way to like exit the Great Island game would be to like reach that half distance, like halfway point to make it there. Would be one way to like go to the Great Island game. The next way to like leave the Great Island game would be to like collect at least like 49, be able to like collect at least 49, like around like that half of like the designated cup being able to do that would be like the next way in which like a person will be getting like the uh, getting like this like options to like leave the GreedIsle game to exit the GreedIsle game. Definitely not a option. Each of these two times like in given like fundamental reimbursement definitely it won't be like them at that point getting suddenly getting like some special spread chart like of the checkpoint card and it become instantly being as like executing that checkpoint spell card or they won't be the case certainly because like unless you're putting in that halfway checkpoint location one like the player reaches like the halfway distance of like the entire of like the map of the area. At that point, there will be like a station, like a building where in which like players will like in and basically there will be a button there to exit like the game. So that will be my procedure in the sense. This will be how like through such a manner like a player will be able to like exit like the real game. And according to my reimbursement, the player collect all like the half around like the half of like the 49 of like the designated like original reimbursement. At that point, like the station might just appear out of less thin air. That way, the option of them to like exit the game or like the players happen through such a manner. So like it will be like a scenario where like them getting into the player getting into this like state and it will be like a small room and it will then button and that basically at that point like then being able to like exit the game and like the moment they will be exiting the game like that station as well would be like disappearing. So like the scenario that I'm like correct. If it's like through like them then the players collecting like 49 different methods start with new method orientation. And even so, like even if that's case as well, that the permit will be like there will be that 10-day limit where like if they want to like continue, they want to be able to like continue from that checkpoint that they will be having to like they will be having to like return back into like the real island game after like exiting into like the real world they will definitely have like return back into like the real island game and continue playing within like the within 10 days and if like the 10 days is over like that option as well will be locked and they will, then if they return back to like the real island game after like the 10 days they will have like start from like the very beginning which would be like those that we might go into and corrections then you know that this would be like the reason for like Tricera that Tricera as well like basically the Tricera having contributed to like basically and that need to like return back into like the game within 10 days would be also due to like the reason that we have so my personal reimbursement were like maybe collecting for the checkpoint station flag which might appear according to my presentation, one collecting 49 cards with the lag only appearing just one lag. And if like a player exits through that checkpoint station number the maybe lag, and the next time the player returns back, that even if the player returns back within like 10 days, like even though the player will be able to continue from that point on, like still like that checkpoint station might disappear, like the moment the player will return back. Might be the case of like might be very interesting. So like like the main like the dominant factor like to basically to have that like checkpoint like place where like the player would be able to like consistently whenever they want would be able to like leave from the game in order to have such uh, an option for the players like them to they will at least have to like make it to like the halfway point system of like the entire like the map of the GreedIsle game. There, the different interpretation would be like constant and permanent. There, definitely my preference. Still, even while using that station as well, that even though the station correcting and that halfway point won't be like the theory, but like I'm looking like still even in that station, like I'm looking like one exiting from like the GreedIsle game, the player will be still having that limitation of like having to like run back to into like the GreedIsle game within that it's like 10 days and like them losing their progress within the game. It's definitely would be the case. Definitely my particular question that I'm taking into so like definitely like as for like the like players who want like the Newbies to like join their team like right now for the him like the like a player being able to like there have been plenty of like card spells through which like the player will be able to like exit like the serial island game like with like it would be like an absolute like it's definitely my own theory and person too and it would be all part of like them giving that absolute hope to like the new players and to see them hidden from like the true dangers of like the real island game so that like they would be having that feeling that hope in that basically and they'll be feeling that basically they will be they will be feeling that hope and basically would be overall feeling great about like so their attempt to like make the players feel absolutely great and have the like a golden opportunity to that basically to like listen to like those three players and basically to like join their in the name of joining their team to like hand over like, all of them cards to them and basically uh, for safekeeping and then that they to get so that they could expenses. Especially my favorite is especially not of the revolution and it's sitting on. In a definitely not the and production right now has got like gone right now and all people so really lacking that voice of coding like realizing that like it's like the trans like I'm definitely still in that voice of change like that particular item which allows like players which alone like allows like the players to like execute the GreedIsle game. Even though changing voice and that like I'm we also like that checkpoint kind of like a situation as well, option as well. Like there are different that we being extreme according to my book, we understand that different there would definitely be two options. And like different that the easier option would be to like obtain that particular item, which would be like the item for like the 49 designated cards. Is that name of the range? That exact item for like the 49 designated cards will be what like the first way is like and like the comparatively easier uh, option among like the two option and these two, only two option and these two like exit from the category running it. Might be like the case to make the reaction. So definitely and also my reaction for like on completing like after like the checkpoint where up like the, reaching that halfway distance in like the map of the Tenja realizing it where I'm definitely prepping for like a checkpoint and like an option to like exit definitely will be happening. Considering after that like the next checkpoint that place where like the next place where like that's connected should even be possible to be on completing like the entire peak of like every right again. And after the friend that on entire completing like the entirety of like the map of like every running game and reaching like the very end of like the in terms of distance like reaching like the very end boundary area of like the very running game would be one way to like exit at that point. And like the other way would be like on after like the checkpoint would be to like collect like be able for like the player to be able to like collect like all the designated cards as well as all 99 all 100 of the designated cards as well as like the entirety of like the free cards as well. Collecting all of this will be like the only other option through which like the player will be able to like be like with any game. It's like after like the checkpoint, especially my person theory and correction right according to my person theory version for like in voice saying that like that one particular item that's near that to like the game. So like according to my person theory mention it will definitely be like the halfway 49 item which like one might have been referring to and not just like 49 item but like also like the 99 designated item as well might be like this very same 49 item, but like an even better version of like better and like stronger version of that 49 item. It be like the 99 item. So like the item, both the items will be the same, but like I'm saying like the 99 item will be like a far stronger version of like the 49 item. It's definitely not good. So like this collectively it might be maybe what like being might have through by collecting a particular item, except being possible only product definitely my category and for example definitely that and that particular item which I'm preferring like the 49 as well as like the 99 designated item would be number 49 would be sword especially my favorite so like special sword like those swords will be like special and really powerful sword and I'm preferring like the 49 sword 49 item that would be like an extremely special and powerful sword and I'm preferring to get like the 99 designated items would be like an extremely far uh, greater and stronger, uh, far greater and stronger version of that sword, that same sword itself would be the 99 item. So like these two items like allowing like, the player to exit from like using these two items would be allowing like, the player to exit choosing any one of these two items will be allowing the player to like exit the Great Island game. Might be the case, might be the so like definitely not taking the rating production right now as for like the player who left during like the career and selection exam as well. Right now being like the possible that want to like join like the player team like I'm the friend definitely team right now would be talking messing with like those three players right now. Definitely not the greatest because like the fact that like he like straight away announced that like he will be joining them like the moment that one of these three players mentioned that like the new that they will be able they can like probably that they're being about like there being plenty of ways to like exit plenty of like spell card ways to like exit like the real game that and that point itself like the fact that player who laughed during the exams that Great Island selection exam of that while that game is straight away saying that he is joining that would be the only thing messing but like those three players because of him instantly probably at that point having realized that basically that basically it might have been only at that point that he might have definitely had like the suspicion of like the of like these three players trying to like select definitely my opinion and that the suspicion might have only almost might have been fully with feeling as if like it was confirmed for him when while like that one of the three players had revealed about like collecting the card and giving it to there and like for like safety. And right now with like the mention of like that three class very same player like with right now like the mention about like there being plenty of ways to like using spell cards to like exit from that particular enemy. That definitely I'm looking right now at this moment it will be like fully confirmed for that player who will have back then to yeah, that basically that they are desperately attempting a trap to like see the cards of the penalties definitely my considering. So like right now, him telling that he will be going to be not only like just messing with them, but like I'm sorry, he will be like probably having that the intention right now to like eliminate those three players for like maybe wasting his time would be also along the line. He might be thinking just leave him the ambition. So either that or like I'm just like he might have initially itself like when they had approached him to like join their team itself like he might have straight away had that serious suspicion of the serious possibility of like them totally trying to like trap him into like trying to like steal his stuff to like come to different and definitely he would have definitely already might have collected like at least 2 or 3 cards already by now definitely not that player who laughed that doesn't like definitely not very much so like definitely right now it's straight away announced that he's going to join the team of the three players. Like that will be totally him probably planning on like that way. Like I'm just right now, him totally walking up towards like that and basically like to show that absolute unity that like that he is on their side. That he's like totally he has believed what they have said and he's like totally have made a fixed decision and mind to like join them like in a way like I'm looking like that. Player like totally putting on that absolute fake act and walking towards them and him totally at that point attacking like attacking and taking out one by one all three of them and eliminating all three of them. It's like good scenario and so that's definitely not theory and professional right now as for like Ron as well as like Kindle right now decided to like not join that those three players like I'm remembering right now for that girl as well. Like I'm remembering that we like right now presenting and the offer and deciding not to like join the team. It's like the scenario and everything and we I'm like only following up for that one and Kindle at that point. It's like scenario that I'm going to table frame. As for like the remaining players like let them totally like deciding to like join like those three the team of those three players like the scenario that I'm going to table and like then I'm going to like eventually I'm looking for like eventually then like Gon and Silvano maybe like continue their journey and I'm looking for maybe for like that girl totally maybe following Gon and Silvano but like the scenario that I'm looking for. Maybe I'm looking for and she might have not realized that like it's like a trap and like she might have like maybe that she might have observed Gon right from like the start, right from like the moment she had seen Gon before like the itself like I think that she might have only noticed and observed like Gon it's definitely going to be pretty much so like I'm definitely that Gon straight away rejecting that offer to join might understand it for her that being that maybe being those reason for like substance contacting that rejecting like offer to get join like the three places like the scenario that so like right number thing her totally not being aware another and totally not being aware of the traffic scenario that I'm doing but like she might have totally from like the very first moment she might have seen God even before like the GreedIsle selection at that point itself she might have felt like something special about background that made my maybe about like one like men or on this act. You might have felt something special. So like I'm saying that solely due to that one rejecting to that on realizing it's a trap and rejecting to that join the three member team players like I'm like only due to that like not only Kilua but also that girl as well. Only subjecting and refusing to like join like the scenario that I'm looking and the remaining Newbies I'm looking totally preparing to like join like the team and I'm looking right now for not only seeing that guys who laughed during like the that players who had laughed during like the GreedIsle selection exam, etc. But like on the things that other guy, that other player as well, who was like asking all the questions to like those three players uh, about like continuously was asking questions to like those three players about like their plan and everything. Like I'm going to by now might have already figured like that like the up line. So like I'm just most likely scenario being that Gon and Killua, and right now the that they are totally following Gon and Killua. And that way that means they're starting in like them three starting like their journey together. Like just like the scenario that I'm going to select for Killua, like I'm going to Killua will be finding some presence as like a discover certainly necessary and so definitely Killua might want to like get rid of her and Killua will be extremely also suspicious of her. So like Amazon still Amazon that have been persistent and like that way it's gone only would be that telling Kindua that it finds like let's just join them will be along the line one will be saying so like in an extremely elected man of Kindua finally getting to that and then three uh like from that point on like joining together like the scenario that I'm looking and then like eventually after maybe by the time like they would be reaching like the next location maybe or like at some point in like the near future and like in terms of we are running into like those other two communities like the scenario that I was referring to those that guys who left during like the exam as well as like the other player who right now are on the questions to like those three players who are trying to like trap the newly black and then Ron and Phil are only running into them at some point with like the scenario that I was referring. So at that point is when I was referring may considering maybe at that point only being when like that were to be that different right now the department created I would be shown like the room of Gona Kidwa in the journey of career I like that it will be only at that point that you'll be finding out that like it was a trap by like those three players all along. Like during the scenario that I would get on the thing through like thing right in between like those two players and gone until at that point of like the scenario that I'm looking. So I'm referring definitely right now for like hurtful left of the follow on and to and ask repeatedly ask John as totally ask one straight away ask one as like why God had basically refused to like join and that comes like before going for like saying thing I'm different thing straight away would be getting like would be not okay with some person just them. So like if you can do it straight away that would be acting in a rude manner towards not at that way like the scenario. And asking her why she's like following them around this line. So like I'm doing that way like a whole war is happening between like Dilua and her this resulting in like her totally forgetting about like why Ron had basically refused to like join like the team of that those three players that the scenario that in that way like I was like her the forgetting about that and only remembering about it only once like eventually in like the near future eventually through their journey that them running while they were running into that those two new people and they lead to in that direction that shop realize having that realization with like the scenario that about the direction of the very interesting. Yeah, like the name of the video and correction right now, but that right now following born and video and that especially on the internet it could be it might have been the police born alone that might have interested that she might have found interested currently might have very much so like following Ron and Silva would have absolutely nothing to do with that. It was that definitely might be very interesting. So definitely I'm looking that still I'm going to for her to eventually in the distant future of like I'm going to bring definitely the scenario to the definitely able to bring her betraying Gon and Kilua related to the so that like Gon and Kilua and her would be that going through all sorts of hardship as they would be preparing for them and for the people into like the real and facing like harder and even danger, thinking more painful challenges like I'm going through all that, like I'm bringing them three with that the teamwork will be surviving and keeps going on further ahead. But like I'm saying still after like maybe I'm looking for like right before reaching like the set point area or like I'm maybe even after like the in like the set point area and like even after like by the time maybe like one kilo and some would be like reaching like maybe 70% of like the GreedIsle game. Maybe at that point, around that time, I was preparing probably for betrayal from that girl. against like Gon and Killua. It's like the scenario that I'm looking and like maybe stealing away like all the cards of like Gon and Killua and basically like basically that way tracking them and running away like and basically proceeding by herself uh, after stealing the cards of the train and stealing the cards of Gon and Killua like so everything ahead was like always told that like the scenario that I'm yet like I'm like eventually even then like I'm like felt like I'm eventually getting into like some sort of like a range of kind of like a situation towards what for things of like some other extremely powerful player. Like I'm considering maybe that being like a player from the Lehman United. And at that point I'm looking at that player and having that up to battle and I'm looking at actually the player from the Robe or scoring and like repeating and I'm looking at like the player from the Fuji about to eliminate. At that point I'm looking gone and Silva showing a very gone saving uh, from like the player from the attack. That's the scenario that I'm looking to go that way. Like Don totally at that point would be totally fighting back against like the player from clan or and defeating the player from at that point of like the arm that I'm looking that way like I'm looking at that point Killua would be extremely angry with that girl and I'm looking at Killua would probably blaming her and calling her separator and everything. That was the scenario that I'm doing. But like I'm looking it would be wrong like that would be while looking into her eyes like Ron at that point in case like she that like something that was like was at that time that lecture. I'm something like that would be something that won't right now itself will be like totally not saying especially when the and won't will be having extremely high intelligence when it comes to that specific area like you know like a real capable like emotions and mind to a certain extent even though not towards like not to absolute perfect landscape or anything but still one would be able to like right now it's in terms of her to want to like in the present for like and like to want like join like if it was join with like the team and so on. And I was in the league to go listening to that like until lot of telling on that she since suspicious and everything. So like I was like really gone totally telling Kilua that like it's fine that her join. But like I'm Kilua would be repeatedly telling on to like not blindly from stuff that like they don't know anything about stuff and all that. You know the lines Kilua would be telling on. And I was bring that exactly usually happening with like when it was like maybe it was like at a way later portion of that from the things into like the career and game like especially that betrayal happening and especially according to the transition gone saving her and I'm looking like at that point I'm looking like one would be still looking at her eyes and I'm looking on would be telling at that point while Silva would be like going on and blaming her and calling her a traitor like gone at that point would be telling Silva to like stop and gone at that point would be looking to the eyes and basically would be telling her at that point that like Ron knew from like the very beginning that point well he would be like joining Ron's team like itself that one thing I like Ron pulled like a real that she is like okay hiding something but like it was like hiding secrets but like it was like saying that like Ron had felt through her eyes while reading her eyes like basically that Ron had changed in her eyes along this line some people like had gone telling her and I was like at that point I'm just finally that was breaking down and basically totally at that point finally something because like at that until that point actually the different that girls like totally mind to be like traveling a journey through like the career and again but like the team of like Ron and Bilwa number going out throughout that journey so totally putting on that as good fake action and would be like always linked to be joyful by breakdown of the hiding suffering and sorrow and suffering with limits so like there would be an absolute valid and specific reason where like for like entering and playing activity and again a reason of like a whole lot of like pain and suffering with limits so like I'm looking it would be only at that point that like I'm looking on is saying her and asking her as to like what is to like what is her pain and something like that and also trying to put that point like I'm looking he will be like finally tearing up and breaking down and said that okay I'm going to like go on until by producing and telling sorry to them that only revealing about her backstory and only at that point that was another that I'm doing. So until then I'm looking to like her journey was like on until I'm going to bring that about the such journey happening and that journey I'm just referring her probably lines about her past and everything. So Catholic feel as one and the case and the career definitely both one and two would be able to like sense that she's like only not being not saying the truth maybe to such an extent certainly not the revolution so maybe like but still like there was only waiting for that for that time. But like I'm saying like it was only at that point in like the question that I'm confessing the truth about her actual backstory. I'm not referring to that backstory. So like so that definitely she would like most likely those were like it won't be like the same kind of situation. It's not being like the same kind of like a situation where like born like entering like the career island game solely to like sleep game and want to father thing around like and in the case of like that girl those were like her situation would be different. Like her those like in some case like her one of her parents might be like she might be having that like her mother or like father might have already passed away. So like she might be either most likely having her mother alone and I'm also like her mother to be usually like simply ill might be like the case. Simply sick might be like the case, and she might even like even though she might be having like a hundred license or like 100 star like something still like the like medications being like far too costly for her to handle and maybe that's that being the reason for like entering like the redialing game so that like to collect all those rare and valuable items that actually might have uh, before entering like the redialing game might have learned that like it's within like the redialing game. So like basically for her to like collect as much of items, valuable and rare items that she can so that like she could like eventually that way her intent would be like not at all to like complete the career and games, but to like collect all these like great number as much as she can of these like rare and valuable items and then for her to like leave and basically that is to be able to like afford and pay for like some uh for the patient might be like sort of only go he might be able to so that converting that to that one at that point is like the scenario that I'm going to talk about. And then like I'm going to like you as well would you telling her at that point I'm sort of simple like she was well like telling her that it's like fine obviously like and I'm going to like through like some realizing her that story and like there's whole bond of friendship between Shakespeare and them that growing even fast stronger than before. And then we can bring like look at actual teamwork at the differently during the three like Gone and Kulua alone that eventually would be like not only meeting game, but also eventually will be according to my preparation will be even completed like the career island game. But like even at that point, while like one and two, you finally completed the career island game. I'm recording her as well to the them and survive until like the very end and completing and returning back to like the real world successfully. Just like after like meeting me and completing the career island to real world, it's like the three of them is like the ninja tsunami that I'm losing totally correct and like the very right. So that definitely my personal very impression right now as well like on even after like witnessing like the elimination of one of like the movies that gone deciding not to like reveal that it's the part to like the remaining movies. That might be solely due to that phones looking at them as like not phones friends that like but like as like competitors as like individual players to be along the lines that one might have seen each and every single might have looked at each and every single one of them at that point is definitely not the real version. So like definitely one might have like along the lines that basically things like it's like Silva don't that's like not friend actions like the remain board players and they had came to that play with the real game. So like basically like Jim that one might have seen what those three like scraps that like was those three players were like setting up as like their gameplay, their way of like playing the game. And basically so like since like the remaining ninjas as well had showed up to and then doing like the career island game to also play like the game while definitely like the fact that the career island game is like the dangerous game that much would be something that everyone would be knowing would be along the lines gone without okay uh, would be like also feeling so like I'm looking for like one might out of it well to not expose their trap and basically instead to see them all like basically those three players as well as like the remaining these like to see all of them as like players who could like at any point who could like try to like attack or try to like eliminate one and kill one to steal away their cards as well. So like one that way might have like but might have been saying like Silva alone as his last friend while seeing for the remaining of like secondary players as well as those three players as just players within like the Island game. And so like Bond might have not wanted to like interfere into that and reveal like the truth about like the trap and instead like Bond might have came to like the conclusion of like prediction that is let the players play amongst each other and let the players win. Let the players survive and win and move on and continue on within that and within like the great and against it's like one might have probably seen that from that against perspective. And that might be the reason for like God's totally not revealing even while knowing that not real even after realizing it's like a trap. But three players like one not revealing that to like when you players will be due to the reason might be the case that's definitely my personal correction right now. So like the very correction right now for like the remaining players right now being told to that at their destination being that of like a match with the Macedonia. That's more reasons like that player who tried to put the straight on like Kilua has fled to exactly the very same Macedonia like 100% of me. Still sitting in my impression that like that initial player that had attacked like Mont and Kilua in actuality might have uh, been part of like this very same gang or these players who definitely might be very impressive. So like definitely for at Macedonia definitely that player himself would have along with like a bunch of other players as part of that these uh like player team would have set that ultimate trap exactly at like the magical city for like Macedonia. So like definitely simple thought might should be like I'm definitely there will be a lot of that cell card available there, especially my preparation. So definitely cell card items and everything would be presently like that might be here. So like I'm doing from there, like I'm doing like that they might have managed to like these teams might have still managed to collect a bunch of that mental items from Amazon already and might be like each time they would be like probably trapping each of like the new players like they would be like just plan each time will be to like trap like the player by taking them telling them to like head over by like taking them to like Macadora and especially like I think like this is like I think like these newbie players can head over to like the location fly over to like the location where like they haven't been to like so like in the relation like one of those players teams itself that would only that like setting up the traffic like will be taking all these like 10 players to Matador and be able to connect. He would be like the moment like he will be taking them to like Matador and they will be landing at Matador itself like they will be straight away landing these 10 players will be straight away landing onto a magical trap perfectly set for them to like suddenly fall into the ambition. So the moment they will be like landing and making their landing at like Magadora from the sky itself, like these 10 players like falling onto constantly falling onto the strap while the person standing right next to like the team member who would have taken the 10 players to like Magadora at that point would be definitely that exact player who had basically like put that race onto like Sidua. Definitely my position to the so like with the same person might have totally like not just race but like also other matches as well to like all the each and every single one of like these 10 um 10 players already while they were making their way towards that city like known as Kilwa. Uh that's right now Mr. Lehman is the so like I'm looking like them all like these 10 players like straight away taken into that and landing into that trap have to be trap and they are like and them all getting trapped while and so it would be such a bad difference that none of them would be able to like move at that point. It's like the scenario that so like at that point, them straight away shocking you think that that guy who would have that guy who would have fled, who would have put that race on to do a like person right standing right next to that other player who would have solved them there and basically like the two of them like totally like dancing away the minders of that each of like those trap 10 contestant 10 players like scenario that happened. So like those 10 players like while being caught in like that trap and also while there won't be able to like, move at all like them get then screaming in rage manner like even shouting at those two players for like trapping them. So like I'm looking like at that point I was referring that would be when that leader of like this gang, which would be once again that very same guy among like the three players who basically had asked them to like that guy who had asked opponent Killua to like join their team in like the beginning while like the newbie player um while opponent Killua had seen like the newbie player get eliminated like that guy would be definitely that single guy would be the leader of the entire group definitely once the resurrection at that point showing up and walking towards the meta with like him snatching away that gap binders of like each of those 10 players when they play, then he himself on the field would be eliminating to be used from some sort of like a magic suit in which like the cards like in the very case like the cards are remaining in the binders of like each of like those um 10 players like getting stolen. And then like I'm putting in a song but some sort of like a unique magic because like the connection could be cut off with like those like players, 10 players in like the trap and like their card, and then like that very same lead player like usually realistically that will be eliminating like all those 10 um 10 players who would have been caught in that trap and would be unable to miss at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm also loaded for me. My end of it. So let me look at the interruption right now at from Lactibra right now, feeling that it was natural to think of like the plan of like those three players who want to the new people that join them that would still there will be far more. Even though like going agreeing to that I'm that both what both Born as well as Silva might not be aware would be that and different maybe that choosing and don't innocent and different that Born as well might have not been able to that connect that the elimination of that one newbie that had shocked Born and Silva connect that elimination of that newbie to that these three players that name and the remember. So definitely like while Silva like thinking on the lines of like the strategy like natural to that thing of like the strategy of like those three players. Like I mean, there will be far more to that strategy of like those three players, which would be like only playing the game in an extremely negative manner, certainly not which might be like the reason for like certainly the elimination of like that movie, which I'm still thinking about the premise would have done by the heroes itself, like the heroes of like the three players itself, like the remaining members of like the group, like it would be the collective, extremely negative kind of like a strategy through which like they might have came up might have started in like the elimination like that one movie plan is definitely my potential and it wouldn't just be like and definitely right now in like the current of like the team of like those three players have been that right now for like trying to like make like the 10 newbie remaining 10 newbie players like memorize like the spells and everything like the different like spell cards and everything like so forcefully making them memorize and all like and like eventually what the strategy would be still like the strategy that great to still put the planning would be still but the same negative strategy were like they will be eventually planning on and like not only just like tricking and stealing like the cards from like the and maybe players, but although like in the process to like although to like ensure to like feeling like the start like all of the folks and then maybe players start like to also ensure to like eliminate all the 10 movies as well. So definitely would be like their actual intent and actual extreme negative plan. Definitely my personal theory about this like even in like the present like night of Kidwa, not God would be like aware. Definitely my personal theory about it. So and this would be the reason for like Silva like dealing with like a natural strategy or like a plan and using it on like feeling that Silva is right. It's also the claimant prevention because like from their experience like they might have not been able to like connect like maybe like might have not been able to like connect the dots and think of the possibility of like basically their strategy like their plan which was released in front of like which they had from which they had really different of like Don and Silva having a lot more deeper negative shades and layers within it to the extreme. Certainly, that to that lack of realization of Don and Silva, which like I'm looking them will be like realizing eventually in like the future of the new necessary. But even while Silva right now thinking that basically that guy had that player who had in like the very beginning had shown up from like the sky and put that straight on Silva. Even that as well would be totally part of like the extreme inner deeper negative strategy that these like group of players would be having. Definitely my preference. And I'm still thinking about to mention that like that player who is like the great Silva definitely will be also part of like their gang of like these like gang of players who have like maybe like the leader of those gangs will be like the best person who might know even like gonna be like join that their team and that as well would be with that as working to like eventually eliminate along with those like 10 newbie players that to with the intent to like totally eliminate one and Silva as well. Exactly like they would have, yeah, and exactly like fundamental questions they themselves would have that eliminated like that being like the one to like eliminate like that for newbie player that right now for eliminated is like one and Silva had that goodness. Especially might be the case, especially might take into a real construction. Certainly, secondary impression right now that like gone until what like journey within like the grade and within like the grade and like right now what like gone to be feeling as of would be only like the only like a starting portion, like only the very beginning of like the extreme extent of like the negative manner in which like the majority of like, the players in like the Real Island game might be actually playing like the Real Island game for like the spell card. Certainly my take is very interesting about this like I'm looking at the more Ron and Kilo like journey to be progressing, the more they would be like realizing it that painfully gone would be like realizing it like more and more. Definitely my best friend, like the more like on journey in like the Real Island game would be progressing like even more than the danger like numbers and like the very same negativity of like the players. That's the way the extreme negative manner in which like the players would be playing like that intensity of like that negativity increasing more and more. Like the more kilo and more would go on to be progressing deep into more and more into like the dining game of like in this scenario that I'm looking and that negativity and positive shoving gone more and more. And like the more gone and kilo journey would be progressing through like the dining games like the scenario that I'm looking like by the time one would be reaching about like 70% of like the period and they gone actually work journey, like in their journey there. Eventually by the time they would have completed like about like 70% of the period and game like and like size and like the negativity and that would be so extreme that I'm looking like gone feeling so extremely disturbed and basically would be like really totally doubting himself as for like the authenticity that side. At that point of the scenario to be that seeing that side of like God which should be totally genuinely and firmly believing that like in just like father thing that like he's definitely a genuine good person. But like there will be that exactly another part of like God that getting gone that would be like strongly feeling that like the possibility of like him actually being a villanistic person and realistically with the intent for all this like negativity to happen within like the Career Island game with that intent realistic kind of like an intent that game has created like the Career Island game uh, would be along the lines of the friend bond would be at that point like, between like that and having that between these two possibilities and basically Corn would be like feeling extremely suspicious of like starting to feel extremely suspicious at that point towards like games. That would be already feeling extremely suspicious towards him by the time John and Silva would be thinking like that 20% mark uh, within like the real life games like the scenarios that are also correct. So like that felt like in the really disturbing and frustrating John and like resulting in like a quarrel as well. Like the team spirit between like that team was between like John and Silva as well getting getting a stuff eventually with like Bond totally having that quarrel with like Silva and like Silva's like version of like the way in which like the negative manner of platforms like in which like the players will be playing the game like in from Silva's point of view like and that totally even triggering like why Silva would be like telling Gon about his fate in the player playing the game through certain extreme negative manner. At that point, like the future, like the 30% while they were rating like 20% of the period, I think at that point would be extremely triggering to Gon, especially member 300. And definitely with that girl following Gon and Tigger, definitely that one condition that I'm looking like Gon might ask that girl to even though she was definitely would badly want to like to join bond between that and fill out the extremely of cases of things of phases of her and would be particularly telling Bond to like not allow her to like join the team. The like still the like the only question that Bond will be asking her would be like whether she's like because that disturbance like won't be leaving Bond and will be still remaining within Bond. That disturbance that was now being created within the regular game we are remaining within zone even at that point. And like the only question that one would be asking that girl to support that would, at that point would be to like if she's like playing that the Great Island game to enjoy it, to like have fun or not. So be along the line, one would be asking that girl at that point. and basically her totally answering that like she's totally like playing the game because she loves the game and wants to like have that as well enjoyment and fun playing the game. If you're on the line somebody her at that point both different things and after they sort of saying that but like in actuality that won't be the case like for her like like that she would be like having most likely a fixed parent at home and then that's that she might want to like separately save by being able to like afford like treatment through all the valuable items present in like by choosing and obtaining like all these valuable items within great number of valuable items within like the GreedIsle game through any means would be along the lines of mindset that it's definitely with which like which might have even brought her into like putting in all hard work and basically even entering into like the GreedIsle game in the first place might have been like the actuality of her situation certainly necessary impression. The situation I said her mindset certainly not right. So like I'm looking God asking this question to her and her shortly lying and fake acting in front of God and telling God that like she totally wants to have fun and she like wants that they bring her and I'm different like them like from this through like the real game and I'm just like maybe it being around like that 70 like the three of them would be reaching that 70% of that progress within the real game. Maybe it being at that point that like substrate trial of the bond and to do what happened was also like a little bit that I'm for it. That being such an extreme food shock to that one which might totally trigger that disturbance within like bond like just like would be coming to like the purpose like bond totally venting out at that point as for like why the game is like why like everyone is like playing like the game in such an extreme negative manner really along the line and like what would be saying at that point and I'm just like the there will be more to that especially when you're with it. So like I'm thinking like it wouldn't just be at like that 70% around like percentage while were like Ron Silva and that girl would have reached eventually. But just looking at that point like that's her and not only just like simply betraying Ron and Silva because like by then like she would have through her journey with like Ron and Silva she would have witnessed and experienced and seen how extremely exceptionally strong Ron and Silva are. So like I'm thinking her as well totally setting up some sort of like an extremely dangerous trap that might have like the potential to eliminate Gon and Killua. The cleaning with Rain so like and like Gon and Killua even and even her that way it went through certain extreme negative extent to like betray what like Gon might have as well to certainly believe what like Gon with front by then lead throughout the journey like I'm going to get into that Gon Gon would be like genuinely feeling towards her and so like she could only without seeing her that's like that's a great friend so like that would be such an extreme shock of like a betrayal for Gon like she would be betraying bonds like the scenario that I'm looking at. That point is when I'm looking like and even and I'm looking at that point for Gon and getting caught in that trap and stealing and getting away just there all of them start that could be like Gon and Killua at that point is also my consideration that I'm looking for. So that way like even at that point like I'm looking like definitely like somehow Ronan was to be still managing like survive and even for that to happen as well I'm definitely like by then like I'm definitely really finding out about like the existence of like a unique card when using which like definitely still thinking about the potential using such a unique art style like the while like the chart of like the target is like stolen still that after like the card would be able to be stolen and basically that target player ends up getting eliminated as well like the card would remain to like for he would have stolen like the card from the target is like definitely in the scenario that ended with all the friends so, like through such a manner of stealing the cards of like and that's just the cards of like one and Silva and they want and people are struggling their way into like say to find the feeling in like they are least managing like succeeding in like saving themselves from that trap like the scenario that I'm going. But like in that process then getting badly into it as well. So those categories that and so like that way on the brain at that point like Gon totally would be bending out at like Killua and so like because like Gon would be feeling extremely that doubt and suspicion towards like King would be creating that much. Gon would really come feeling extremely disappointed in game hope Bond will be like loving so much even though Bond haven't seen yet. So like definitely my preemption. So like definitely that for scenario representing in like Bond bending out at Killua and Killua trying to like calm Bond down by like playing Killua's perspective of like the situation, but like the negativity within like, the games and all that, and that was when that triggers Bond even more like the and then ending up like unintentionally triggering Bond even more than the scenario that I'm doing. That way like I'm like a war happening between like Bond that absolute Bond and Killua as well. at that point it's like can you just scenario that I'm looking. So like by the time one will be desperate to like find game by then like the scenario that I'm looking to find game and to like find out the truth. Then more than like one wanting that father son's reunion at that point I'm looking that wants that mind would be so extremely it's getting disturbed by as like wants would be like progressing more and more within the game that like the only thing wants mind would be to like just make game find and make game and find out the truth from game that basically game one would which game was like the person who was part of like the uh, number of people who had built that material and game that sprint that so like they game built this game intending for like all those like negativity to like happen within like the game to find out the truth or like was it something that like game might have never intended to happen but like happened eventually. So like to find out the truth in this thing would be like one thing that I was like at that point like would be the only thing in that one might at that point to find out that truth whether getting like good or bad like to find out the truth would be like only thing in that one's mind and like the biggest priority in that one like at that point even more than like having that father son reunion between that God and King uh, even more than God wanted to have that father son reunion between like God and King like for God at that point it would be like for God to be able to like know like it would be like the biggest priority of God like in the scenario that I'm going to go with and I'm going to end up and I'm also putting like by the time one will be making it towards being like I'm putting definitely for like one to be extremely angry and disturbed and frustrated towards like King straight away walking towards King in such a manner and we straight away asking King about like this very thing that because like John will be extremely impatient and this will be like the first thing that straight away John will be asking King and King will be totally at that point I'm looking like the scenario to be like King most likely telling John that they to have a battle with like King and if John's surpasses King and defeats King, then King would give the answer to that launch question will be along the line. King at that point only you're responding back to Gon and Ambition Gon will be so desperate for like the answer for that truth that like that even King making such a challenge would be extremely frustrated, even more frustrating to Gon. Definitely going to because like Gon would be wanting that answer right then and there. So like I'm yet like King not agreeing to that and like Gon straight away at that point deciding to like have that ultimate that is against like King. So like I'm something like that way King versus Gon fight happening and they leave but if I like that living that fight like eventually I was like Gon struggling his way to that eventually barely managing to like defeat him as like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like I'm looking like that fight itself will be what things ends up to like strong bond with it definitely member range. So like this will be like intentional and in a conscious manner like being without at that point challenge bond to like have the fight with him. So that like through the fight that bond would be finally getting his hands up. But like he would be at that point only feeling that like rather than him telling Bond the truth, like that still won't be like clearing Bond's like conscience and that would won't be like giving Bond that have good clarity that you need connecting to like the other things like with on back. So like I'm saying like so that to give that clear answer to give that clarity to Bond like I'm saying like Jim would be like challenging one to the battle and then like in that battle like I'm like using like the spell cards as well as like manpower and the people like God and again like fighting against people and like Bond. And the by then like Bond would have uh, by then like one would have collected a great number of cards in that as well. It's definitely more better. So like I was like even though I'm whispering at that point King will be having like way more cards than what Bond. Like King will be having all the cards and Bond won't be having like all the cards, but like Bond will be having like maybe like the majority of the cards at that point is like rest of the scenarios that I'm looking. And that fight happening between like King and Bond. And basically in that fight like Bond finally struggling with way to like maybe King just like the scenario and everything. So still gone struggling with pain to like repeating game. And that way, like while and at that point, like while game would be like remaining to like Gon about like that fight itself. And at that point, Gon certainly having that realization and that clarity into that basically into finally Gon getting like answer that he would be like so soon to fight for that sort of thing is like that he uh uh super and somehow like he Gon realizing that like that point there's like the whole just scenario that I'm going to go for it and my brother and it will be, at that point it will be that realization that would be what counts. So we with that feeling of down at it like really don't have that really completed like the reality that for Don to like have one will be having that feeling at that point once like one will be realizing that goal just by realizing that goal. It's like getting to scenario that I'm going to go for and my brother very much. So like me, my taking your and for instance right now for like to watch that very was definitely the start of that number 83. So it's like I'm looking at me to do obviously that item won't be the like to do for like the majority of that to do journey within like the career and then definitely the knowledge that I'm looking at. So that's definitely I'm looking for like even though to do have like process like very first step in nature item even before don't getting like a designated item that the fact that it was block actually comes designated item. Like I'm going to select for like I'm to select to is it only happy and excited about this just definitely necessary membership. But like I'm select to without much great delay I'm looking for exactly to I'm looking at it to do most likely after like to will be leading this city current city and that maybe it will be in like the next city or like the city affect the next location or like the location after like the next location. Around this time I'm definitely Silva totally losing his like Silva totally losing his like sort of the clean up brand. And I'm looking at it to be like uh an exceptionally strong uh an exceptionally strong like player from like the deeper portions into like the real island game like I'm thinking that would be for some specific reason I think like that person would be showing up to like the earlier areas of like the real island game. That single person I got. So like I said, that person would be exceptionally strong. And I'm preferring like that person would be showing up like I'm preferring like for that from my experience for that such a mysterious exceptionally strong uh Great Island game player like showing up to like the area location of like the Great Island game. So either I'm preferring to work with this him showing up for like some other specific reason and him to be like running into like to do with like to do start of like the zone and that was a lesson totally like taking that finding out like checking like using that like setting like the items of like Silva because like I'm just like that strong especially strong fighter like player like would be like not having like the sort of item definitely my implement and definitely some like basically right now that sort of item that Silva sort of is like number 83 I'm definitely pressing like since like there's like a total of 0 to like 99 definitely card taken and definitely people are already getting in like the very early stage of people getting like number three, number 83 of like the full start. Like I'm definitely so like right now not very ambitious, but like it won't be according to that any quarter. So like I'm using like there won't be any proper quarter for like in terms of like the fair charts with like the very huge limitations of like three or like single digit limitations are and compared to like the charts with like the way greater limitation of like basically 100 or more uh, that can be of such cards that can be collected like the distribution of the class. That's like how it will be distributed like, spread across like the world of the Great Island game. It will be probably in like a random manner. Where like I'm thinking like it will be only like the 49 like the halfway point like 49 items as well as like the 49 designated items as well as like the 99 designated items alone might have been like the only two items that might have been consciously put into like the 40 and the 49 like designated items would be around like the halfway close to like the halfway point of the tender map of the running game and like the 99 item would be towards like the very end of the running game. So these two items might have been consciously while creating like a grid and game might have created by in those exact purposes by being might have been like might be like a creation. But like as for all the remaining items with like the uh would be like totally randomly spread across like the entire physical world of like the grid island games definitely not creation. So that especially because of the members also setting like a continent creation that mysterious extremely strong cap extremely strong pair like this either showing up to like the early areas of like the real game from would have progressed so much ahead within like the real game showing up to like early areas of like the real game and like basically using like the steel card like I think like in I'm in that particular scenario where like instantly checking Silva's like cards and I'm like shortly finding like sort of growth and especially I'm considering like the sort of growth will be having like this limit will be like a single digit number especially in temperature. Yeah, the sort of growth will be like an extremely rare item, especially when about which like Silva and Ron won't be aware of it, especially when then like Silva and Ron right now won't be having like the option to like check what the limit is of like the sort of growth is also definitely necessary. So like without realizing how extremely aware Kilua sort of would be according to my example, like Kilua totally excitedly would be walking with the flag, that sort of group chart in the flag binder, but like I'm thinking at least that person flag like that actually strong player like really only the special points are running into that exactly Kilua. Or like I'm looking like him searching for like the sort of group item and him running into that Kilua and just him checking Kilua's like cards and shortly finding out the sort of group that Kilua. And he totally like using like he would be like a pro at like using all those like spell cards uh, so like I'm that way like even though Killua will be having its like exceptional and cause like even like full trophy in a game like Create Islands where like spell cards have so much of importance. Unless you're reacting using like the spell cards in such an extremely tactful and skillful and pro manner using the which like him probably easily outsmarting Killua and overpowering Killua and basically steering away Killua's like sort of card and like really straight away heading off to and Gone as well won't be able to do anything because like because of him being like exceptionally pro uh in terms of skills when handling like all these like cards the blame of like completely that or foreign Gone and Killua and stealing that Killua's like sort of pro cards and like leaking like maybe even while making fun of like Killua and Dawn or like mocking them like him straight away heading off into like the extreme deep areas of like the video and so like at that point I'm like Killua's ego will be taking a major blow and then some definitely in the from that point on would have fixed in his mind to like definitely not trust until he finds that very same individual and basically fight and eventually fights and or person defeats him using like spell cards itself without relying on Killua's like and for alone like by using the spell cards itself for like Killua to like or for and defeat that person that the player can basically to like get back to your like 83 sort of start like you know that has to be stick in his mind to like not trust and like you are with it definitely very important scenario setup. So like I'm sort of sure that time that I would like Bond maybe after like you know would be like extremely frustrated on like losing his like sort of start like I'm sort of Bond maybe telling you that like with me it's fine I think that like there will be multiple of like such cards such sort of start would be along the lines one will be telling Silva that like Silva gave it like fine kind of the sort of start would be along the lines that one will be at that point trying to like comfort Silva. But like at that point I was telling Silva only shouting back and Don that as the raised and frustrated towards like that midfield of player that Silva definitely won't be like having even if Silva gets another along their journey like Silva gets another sort of start uh, uh, like lying in the ground or like from anywhere like Silva will be giving that start to go and like Silva won't be accepting another sort of start unless that Silva or for an anticipating that there is an mysterious fight mysterious player and basically using like Silva's like spell card that Silva and only with such a manner that Silva gets defeats him and gets back Silva like sort of 83 card like if that's not the case then Silva won't be accepting any other sort of card and if the Silva telling on that that Silva's current ultimate goal and Silva won't be like trusting until she achieves that goal. Until along the lines of the friend Silva so they declaring in front of like Ron with like what scenario that I'm doing. So like that way like with like Ron having like ultimate goal ahead to like find and meet him like I'm doing Silva as well all of a sudden like suddenly having this like huge goal to basically because like Silva would be absolutely certain that will be definitely most likely the next time Silva be running in, Silva might not run into him like after like that person would be escaping like Silva would be like feeling that the next time Silva might not be able to like run into him like anytime soon. So like it would be only towards like the very end area so, like that person might have been purposely or for like like that player might be for Silva but only having that feeling that the next time he will be meeting him, he will be meeting him like it will be on like the very other end of like the GreedIsle and they game that by the time that they would be about to complete like would have completed like the majority of like the GreedIsle game might be like the possibility of like the next time where like the next time to do my hate that very same mysterious or like player to get on the line to do all the theory. So like I'm looking definitely to do having his own goal as well to like basically to prepare and like to work hard and prepare and like to get all the starts and like to level up and skill up and upgrade to the skills and knowledge and everything and so that like you will be don't be prepared by the time you will be taking it. and will be running into that very same for player that can expand so that like Indua will use like the creature and get that Indua lack and lost sort of approach A to 3 start and that way Indua would be able to achieve the goal. It would be along the lines of like Indua would be feeling and like Indua declaring that thought in front of both smiling down like the scenario where I'm always and my person very much right.